the kind you wear it tight. Button up from 9 to 5. I tried that life but said goodbye. I'm not always polite, but I get the job done. Who says the world can never be fun? I'm simply unprofessional. Simply unprofessional.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Simply Unprofessional. I'm your host, Webby. Joining me tonight, we got Mr. Rob Edquist.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And we got Mr. Devin.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Alrighty, guys. So, this week, Devin proposed we watch a movie. We're going to talk a little bit about this movie. It's one that I hadn't seen until yesterday. It's the Marvel's The New Mutants movie. Now, I don't know about you guys. I went into viewing this movie with very low expectations, mainly because it got terrible reviews from everything that I've read. Granted, this was closer to when it was in the theater, like new in the theater, I'll say. So I don't know if any of the reviews have gotten better since then. But I know on Rotten Tomatoes, it got a whopping 33% on the tomato meter. Although it got a 56% score on the audience meter, which is kind of on par with what it was rated on IMDb. Because IMDb gave it like the 5.3 stars out of 10. So the audience and IMDb are both giving it like right around the midway point. As far as
I will say it probably should be. I would probably say the bad reviews at the beginning. I know for a fact it was getting not review bombed, but it was getting reviewed solely because, unfortunately, by a chunk of people, not a lot, but a chunk of people, enough people to make a difference early on, were reviewing it just because they were like, oh, it's woke garbage. Marvel's just shoehorning, an LGBT plot line for no reason, and blah, 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 blah. Which, I mean, is wrong. Technically, in the comics, were those two in a relationship? No, they just had a really, really good friendship.
Well, that's, according to Rob,
you can interpret however you want.
According to Rob, they were.
Yeah. Well, they described them always as soulmates. They never exclusively said that they were dating.
They never said they were like dating because they both had their own partners throughout all that, but they were always just kind of like, they were always just, like soulmates is the best way I would describe it. However you want to interpret that is, I guess, up for interpretation.
Remember, they made this from an old comic where you weren't allowed to show children.
Right. I completely understand that. I'm if I'm not mistaken, like, I'm trying to think. Let me see.
Because it's after having seen this, I will say it's my understanding that the plot of this particular movie, timeline-wise, takes place after or concurrent to the Logan movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because of some of the flashbacks that they had of the Essex Corp, or that of Danny had of the Essex Corp, because those were scenes taken directly out of Logan.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is that timeline.
It is.
But at the same time, they were also mentioning about the X-Men and possibly becoming X-Men and stuff. But during the Logan timeline, the X-Men were all dead, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be at some point kind of restarted.
Okay.
Because you have, if I'm not mistaken,
I mean, could the other possibility be that this took place timeline-wise before Logan, and she was just seeing into the future? But that wouldn't have made sense to me.
Not at all.
You're supposed to be seeing into the doctor's
thoughts. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so this definitely would have taken place at least either concurrent to Logan or sometime after Logan.
Yeah. I mean, so running through, like, I'm not like I love X-Men, but I haven't read all the X-Men comics over the years. So just running through like a quick scan of the history. They've never had, even recently, they haven't had like a on panel like confirmation of like actual relationship. But I mean, they've always just been described as having a deep friendship or being soulmates. Because I know they have like a psychic link, like in the comic books, like Danny Moonstar has a psychic link with Rain when she's transformed, and they kind of can like feel each other. And it is, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like,
well,
it doesn't bother me either way.
That's also partly due to the fact that Danny
of her powers
communicate with animals.
Yeah, her powers.
So.
Her powers. But I mean, specifically, they have like an actual like link, like more so than just just that. They have like a link.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is. Like, it doesn't really like. It's no reason to review bomb it because, again, like I said, in my opinion, like based on everything that's been in the past, like you could interpret that however you want.
Right.
Like it doesn't bother me. So I mean, unfortunately, it did have some of that. Like there were a couple of reviews on like IMDb and things like that early on.
Well, see, a lot of the reviews that I had read was just a lot of
this movie has problems.
Pacing was super slow. And
this movie has problems for a variety of reasons.
See, I
didn't dislike it. I didn't dislike it, but this is the thing. The movie
I was being biased when I watched it, but yes.
Why were you being biased? Because of the bear?
Yeah.
Of course.
Dude, the bear was dope.
He was. So Webby was rooting for the bear at the end. He wanted him to kill all the kids. Got it.
Well, I mean, I will say this.
To be able to control the bear.
Yeah, I will say this.
This movie ultimately, I think, had a couple of problems, but they were kind of big problems.
Well, before we dive into that, I will say this, because I just watched this again for the second time. I watched this today with Rob and Donnie. And I was telling Donnie, because he was asking who each person was, so I was going through and pretty much saying which mutant they were. And I was saying, of all those powers, I would probably, I wouldn't mind having Wolfsbane's powers, just essentially being a werewolf. I think that'd be kind of dope. And, is she the most powerful out of those? No.
No, it's magic.
But... And then I told Donnie and Rob, I was like, there is a caveat, though, and I will tell you at the end of the movie. So the caveat is when Danny essentially calms the bear and it disperses. I was like, this is my caveat. If she could control that bear or gain another bear like it, similar to it that would fight for her, I would 100% take that power. I would want that power. Who wouldn't want a giant fucking shadow bear fucking fighting for them? It was insane. I loved it.
I mean, she kind of can. I mean, because she does have the ability to make, like, I guess, like fear-based illusions that can hurt people. So I mean, she could theoretically conjure up another bear. Well, they made it where she can conjure your fears, but in reality, if I'm not mistaken, she's I think she's an empath, not just fear based. She can conjure up empathetic.
She could only do dreams, but she could do any her own dreams or other people's.
Dreams. Yeah. So theoretically, she could conjure up that bear again,
right?
Along with any other thing else, because I think in the comics now or at some point she's because I know at one point she became a Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Or she was called Valkyrie and started training with the Valkyries. One of the two.
Yeah.
And
she went under a bunch of different aliases.
She did. Now she uses a psychic bow. So
okay. So let's get into the actual plot of the movie. Essentially, we start the movie with Danny being woken up on her reservation. She's a Cheyenne Indian. Cheyenne Native American, whatever the fuck. I gotta be politically correct. I gotta watch my mouth, apparently. I'm on thin ice with the SU lawyers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so
you know it.
there's like it's hectic. It's snowing. It's summertime. You hear growls. You hear things blowing up. They're running through the woods. She ends up hitting her head on a rock after her entire reservation gets decimated. She wakes up in a hospital or like a laboratory, I guess. And it's just her, the doctor, and what, one, two, three other kids. No, four other kids. Essentially, this is a facility for mutants who have done something and need to know more, and we're sent here to learn more about their powers. We find out, they kind of allude in the beginning and make you think, like, 'cause she talks about her superior, and if you once you're rehabilitated here or you're deemed safe, you can move on to possibly go and go to this other institute for mutants and blah blah blah. And it kind of at first alludes you to the fact that maybe they're talking about Xavier's Institute for Gifted Kids. Not the case. You find out it's the Essex Corporation, where they're pretty much just gathering up mutants and turning them into crazy killing machines. Now, I will say the movie was a little on the slow side as far as progression, but at the same time, after having watched it twice, I don't disagree with the pacing. I feel like they paced it very well. I feel like we got to know a little bit of the backstories for the characters, maybe not super in depth, but we got a little bit from each character, and we got to see each character's power. But so the mutants in this facility, we have Rain Sinclair, who is Wolfsbane, played by Macy Williams. Wolfsbane's essentially, she's a Scottish werewolf. And she is very religious. That's really the only things I remember about her as a character.
I mean, at this point, that's pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean they nailed the head on in the movie as far as that character. You also have Iliana Rasputin, aka Magic, who is Colossus's younger sister, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who many of you will know if you were fans of The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. She's the main character in The Queen's Gambit. Her powers, she's a sorceress. She can manifest like armor and a sword, and forms of teleportation through a place that she essentially either tapped into or created by herself, called Limbo. Let's see, who else we got? We had Sam. I don't remember his last name in the movie, but he was Cannonball. Guthrie. Yeah, so that was Cannonball. He was played by Charlie Heaton.
Guthrie.
There we go.
So Cannonball's power essentially is he can focus energy into, at least in the early years, which I'm guessing was the character in the movie based anyway. In the early years, he could focus energy into his legs, and then essentially explode and propel himself around like a rocket. Yes. Hence the name Cannonball.
In the comic books, he has an impenetrable shield that appears every time he does this. It surrounds his upper body, which allows him to blast through things. He did not have this in the movie.
See,
so bash and break in his arms and bash in his.
I really thought that in the comics, Cannonball learned that ability. Like I don't. Did he have that right from the get-go?
I thought he did.
See, I thought in the
not
early
working
years, he didn't have that, and then he learned to kind of focus the energy around different
Maybe-
parts of his bodies, which caused the
Maybe he
force
used
field.
to wear a helmet or something. I don't know.
Um,
I don't. When I started reading the comic books, he already had that ability. I will say it might be previous to that. Maybe he did not.
yeah. But yeah, so in the comics, he does, and I mean, even in the movie, I will say, maybe not as much, but he does have some form of, not necessarily an invulnerability to damage, but he does have some form of protection, I feel, when he's doing this. Otherwise,
He doesn't die when he
he
shoots
doesn't
him through a
die
wall.
when he hits the fucking concrete when he's, chained to that brick. Yeah, I mean, he has bruises and, a banged up arm and stuff, but he seems to heal relatively quickly from it. And again, he doesn't just instantly blow up his head when he hits something. Because he does, it is a rocket. He is going from 0 to 100 in less than a second.
Later in the movie, he literally rockets through people.
Yes. So I do feel like in the movie they did try to have that, maybe just not to the scale that he did later on in the comics because of it being a learned ability. Next we have
Sunspot?
Berto, yeah. Roberto, I don't remember his last name in the comics.
Costa, I think.
Yeah.
Costa, I think.
Who is Sunspot. He is, I believe he was from Brazil. And essentially Sunspot just absorbs solar energy, and he can manipulate solar energy. He literally turns into a solar flare, his whole body. He burns up, and I know he can punch things and cause small explosions. I think later on in the comics he can shoot beams out of his hands. I want to say he can fly at some point, which we don't see
later
him
on
do.
Later on in the comics, he can. Early on, he only could really use it to enhance his strength.
Yeah.
But later on in the comics, he can fly. He can. He's like a weak Superman. Later on,
Yeah.
like like a weak version of Superman. Later on.
And then the Doctor is Danny Moonstar. She is.
You forgot the most important part of Sunspot's abilities.
Okay. According to Rob, the most important part is when he goes Super Saiyan fucking Supernova, he burns all of his clothes off and becomes a hot naked dude.
Yep. It's the most important part.
So Danny Moonstar is also known as Mirage. Oh, we didn't say this, but Iliana Rasputin is known as Magic. I don't know if I mentioned that.
You did.
Danny Moonstar is known as Mirage. She does go by other aliases throughout the comics. I know her as Mirage.
Moonstar, Mirage.
I think Valkyrie is one of her names
Valkyrie.
at some point.
She had a lot of names.
But she is a Native American who can create illusions based off of fears and desires of other people. Devin, maybe you know this. I know I had asked Rob earlier. Is she related to either Thunderbird or Warpath? And no, listeners,
so.
I'm not saying this because she's Cheyenne or she's Native American, and I think all Native Americans are fucking related, okay? I
don't believe
curious. So Danny Moonstar is played by Blue Hunt, the actress Blue Hunt. She was in the originals? What?
What are you talking about?
The actress who played Danny was in the originals for 6 episodes.
I do. Based on her acting in this, that's not surprising.
I don't remember her from it, that's all.
What character did she play?
Her role was the Hollow.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. Actually, kind of a major character. Do not remember her playing her.
Yeah. Me neither.
That's funny.
I'm gonna Google this now.
The Hollow was the thing that was inside of fucking what's her name?
Yeah, Hope.
That's-
Oh yeah. Oh, there you go. It is her.
Well,
Well, good to
I
know.
thought she had better acting in this. In this.
I don't think her acting was bad. I don't think anybody's acting was bad in this. I thought it
Her
was pretty
acting wasn't
good.
bad in this. It just wasn't. It wasn't, my opinion, her acting in this wasn't particularly good enough to really make me care about her as the lead.
Okay.
I do think in terms of acting and even development, even though she had less development, out of all the characters that they did backstories for in this, the one I cared about the most, that I felt was the most fleshed out, even without being that fleshed out, was probably Iliana.
Yeah.
Like, I cared about hers the most out of everybody. Like, Sam's was literally a flashback and a conversation. Roberto's was a conversation, and I'll get more into that later. Like about, I'll get more back into that later about like how and why this movie did bother me at some point. All that ties in. So I'll get back to that. Yeah.
The last person in this facility to talk about is the Dr. Cecilia Ray Reyes. She was the one doing the experiments and monitoring all the kids. She is a mutant herself. And her power is she can generate protective fields around things.
Now, in the comic book,
Yeah,
she was with the X-Men for a while. I'm pretty sure she was a black woman in the comic, and she could only put shields around herself, and she still felt the pain of whatever hit her. It just didn't do any damage, which kind of sucked.
all of those things sound very accurate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Artistic license. Because I mean, you can't really be the big bad of the movie.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that she was even the big bad. She
She wasn't, but I mean,
she was following orders.
She was, but she was ultimately the antagonist at some point.
Yeah, she was. I mean,
she was. I guess you call her like the secondary antagonist.
but we don't know. Like, maybe she was being forced to do these things to these kids by the Essex Corp because the Essex Corp had her family held hostage. We don't know what's behind all this. In any case, yeah. So
I like at the end how her attitude was like, "Children, go back to your rooms. I was only trying to kill one of you."
yes. So essentially, Danny, the plot goes, Danny mingles with some of these. We learn a little bit about each of the children, why they're there, who they hurt, because that's why they are here, is that each one of them hurt somebody in their lives.
Which in the beginning you think is because they're like, "Oh, we're going to train you not to hurt people," but in reality it's like, we want you to hurt more people.
Right.
You seem good at it, so that's why you're here.
I will say, throughout the process of testing on Danny, we find that every time she's asleep or less lucid is when her power manifests and becomes stronger, and other people start seeing nightmares and visions and things of that nature. And then finally, they realize that Danny's potential is too powerful, and the Essex Corporation wants her put down, wants a couple of samples of her blood, but essentially to terminate her due to her being too dangerous to control. While being put under, they end up. Rain ends up rescuing her from being killed, and then they hunt down the doctor. And then the doctor puts bubbles around each of the children individually and starts like making them smaller and smaller, and essentially causes Danny to go unconscious.
I think he was blocking the oxygen from getting in.
Yeah. And that's when Danny, because she lost consciousness, loses control, I guess. and we see the snowstorm happening outside, and we learned from earlier that it brings the snow, and then all of the cameras go down, and then there's a perimeter breach. Next thing you know, a massive demon bear bites through the building and eats the doctor. And then all the kids end up essentially running from the bear, fighting the bear. We get to see a really cool scene with Iliana taking on the bear with Lockheed. And then essentially it's relatively quick, but each character does something against the demon bear. Cannonball cannons into his face, knocks out one of the teeth. Sunspot essentially just starts like batting like pews that are thrown at him off to the side, and then like catches one and like hits the bear with it, and then gets splattered and turned back into human form. And then as Rain, or Wolfsbane, is about to get eaten because she's like falling towards the bear's mouth.
She tried to scratch his eyes out first, which is how she ended up by his face.
Right. And then she ended up on like the upper level of the church. And the bear was trying to eat her. That's when Danny woke up from her dream thing and essentially commanded the bear to stop, and then calmed the bear, and then essentially showed that she no longer was fearful of it and that she had control, and the bear dissipated. And that's essentially where the movie ends. The doctor's dead, so the barrier around the facility's gone, and all of these kids just start walking off, leaving the facility behind together. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. Now, let's go into Devin. What things about this movie did you not like?
So, the biggest issues I had with this movie was mainly 4 points, but they all kind of tie into, I guess, one major point, and it's, I guess, the way it ties into, like, I guess, the tone, the tone and the genre of the movie, which leaves room for issues across the board, in my opinion.
Okay.
First thing was the pacing, which you said you feel the pacing was fine. I feel the pacing was okay. However, looking at the movie as a whole and what they were trying to do with it, I do feel the pacing sucked because of the direction they decided to take the movie, as opposed to if they just cut out that aspect of the movie, which I'll get to in a second. They could have probably paced it differently, and we could have gotten more character development and more backstory, which maybe would have cared about these kids a little bit more, because ultimately at the end of the day, that was the biggest issue I had with this, is like I really didn't feel anything for any of these characters. Like the only one, like I said, though, at the end of the movie, the only one I kind of like felt something a little bit for was probably Iliana. Even though her backstory was like, you kind of didn't get the full picture, but it was enough for you to understand why she felt that way, and why she was acting the way she was acting. And I felt a little bit more for her than some of the other characters, but at the same time, all of them could have been developed, I think, a little bit more. So that was it. The main issue I have with this movie, if you look at the movie, this movie is listed as an action, sci-fi, horror movie. I had the issues with the horror movie part.
Okay, so before you get into this, before you explain what your issues with it being classified as a horror movie is, I will say, I had never seen a trailer before watching this movie. Rob posted the trailer in one of the Discord channels, and I watched the trailer yesterday, and I agreed with Rob. The trailer makes it seem like a horror movie.
Well, that's what they were going for. They based this movie. They used Nightmare on Elm Street as an idea for this movie of, your fears are coming to life and trying to kill you,
right?
Which is fine to a degree, but I feel like them also making it an action sci-fi movie, being it's an X-Men movie effectively, but not really.
Right.
An action sci-fi movie, but also going the horror route. I feel like they didn't lean into either one of those too hard, or hard enough to make it where it really shined in either area.
Well,
I felt like if they went full on horror movie, and like if they made this like a horror movie, except the people are, the people in the horror movie are just, kids, or, future X-Men, air quotes, or kids with powers in the X-Men world dealing with this in the, and it was more of a slower burn of finding out, well, why is this happening? Why are these nightmares coming to life? There's more things happening, not just like every character gets one nightmarish interaction scene and then that's kind of it. And so I felt like that would have been better that way, or it would have been better just not having that aspect at all and just having it where like, okay, yeah, like stuff's happening around the place because of her powers being being dream or nightmare influenced. So it still would have had a little bit of that, but I wouldn't have leaned into that horror aspect so hard because I found they were doing a lot of like the horror tropes in this movie. But like for instance, like the scene when he's in the pool and like she disappears and then he feels the hand in his back and he's like, funny, stop playing. He turns around and it's like his dead girlfriend and he freaks out. Like super horror movie tropey kind of jump scare for no reason. But they didn't lean into it. It would have been almost better. Like if they were going to lean into it, I would have shot that exact same scene, kept it focused on him. You saw like a normal hand come over his shoulder and like rest on his shoulder, and he sees that or whatever. And he like puts his hand on like her hand, and then turns around, and then we get the jump scare of it being like the burnt body or something like that. That would have been a better lean into it on the horror side, or get rid of it. I feel like because they were trying to do both and trying to shoot both at the same time, the movie ultimately suffered from a pacing and a tone issue because it was like a horror movie, but it was kind of an action movie, but it was kind of...
Okay, but to be fair as well, it being essentially an X-Men, not an X-Men movie, but it's an X-Men what do you call it? Like a franchise like that.
It's in the X-Men universe. It's the movie set in the X-Men universe.
Yes. With that being said, I feel like it was horror enough for the audience that they were pulling for without being too scary that, parents wouldn't want to bring their kids to go see it.
I mean, but it's already PG-13. Like they could, kept it. There's other PG-13 horror movies that are good, that are at least do the horror theme.
I get that, but that's the thing.
I'm just saying,
you're not going to bring a 13-year-old to go see Nightmare on Elm Street. At least I wouldn't. That's how that's why I'm fucked up. But like a 13-year-old seeing like those smiling faced guys with the masks and then pulling them off and stuff, that's probably creepy enough for a 13-year-old.
I agree.
On average,
I agree to an extent, but to give you an idea of some other like really good PG-13 horror movies, A Quiet Place is a PG-13 horror movie.
Never seen it.
Insidious is a PG-13 horror movie. Lights Out is a PG-13 horror movie. You've never seen it. The Ring is a PG-13 horror movie.
Okay, first off, The Ring should have been R, and fuck that movie.
And so is The Grudge, by the way. The Grudge is also
now
PG-13.
The Grudge, fuck that movie even worse. Now The Ring, I could sit there and say, okay, I watched The Ring all the way through up until the point at the very end where the bitch crawled out of the TV. I had to shut it off after that. I was done. No, fuck that bitch.
To be fair, granted, this was back in 1982, but Poltergeist was rated PG.
That's based off its time though.
I know. That's why I said. That's why I gave that caveat before I said that. Okay?
I will say, okay, now having watched this, I did tell Rob that the trailer made it seem a lot darker and scarier than it was.
Right. And I feel like, and again,
they probably could have gotten away with just dropping the horror.
And that's my point. Like, you still could have they could have definitely played it more of a psychological horror, because every kid in there was psychologically damaged.
Yes.
They could have played it more for a psychological horror aspect, as opposed to going for the jump scary horror aspect that they went for. And I think it would have been better because we could have explored their backstory more through the psychological trauma and horror, much better than the jump scare monster type horror that they wound up going with at scenes. Like, why was she in the, she's like in the Catholic Church, like, she's doing her confessions, and then the fucking priest guy comes, or she's in the shower, and like the obviously dead, deformed priest guy comes in and starts branding her. Like, I think it would have been better had it been, in more of a psychological based thing, or like she's in there and then like the doors start opening and closing by themselves, like why don't lean into the ghost or the haunted aspect of it? Because even then they even allude to like, oh, you got us trapped in here with demons, this place is haunted, I'm going to get out. Like that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't have been about them. It shouldn't have been about them being like, they built it up as them being trapped in an asylum or trapped in a place with demons. It should have been they're trapped in this place, but they're also trapped internally with their own demons internally, and they have to deal with those. Well, that's what I feel like it should have been.
I got that aspect, though. I felt,
right.
watching this movie, I felt like they were all struggling with their own demons.
I feel like that was touched upon, and that was the ultimate end goal that we got. But I feel like in between of like when the horror shit started and when it ended, it became this kind of jump scare monster chase movie for no real reason, outside of them just giving them something to showcase their powers, which I just feel that part of the movie could have did better. They could have did that better. They could have changed it a little bit. They could have sort of kept the horror tag, but made it more psychological than just horror. Like they would have did better by,
I don't know. I thought they did pretty well as far as.
Well, I mean, you also don't like horror movies. That. You also like horror movies, which is fine. Like this isn't like I'm not judging this movie as a horror movie per se. I just feel like it really didn't fit the genre of what I would call a horror movie for the for the aspect, right?
Yeah. See, really I'm not basing this off of what they considered or what they tagged the movie as.
Right. No. I'm saying that.
I based all of my references, all of my thoughts on this being an X-Men movie of an X-Men franchised movie in the world, comparing it to ones like Days of Future Past and then Logan, because you kind of have to compare it to Logan in an aspect because it shows you the flashbacks from literally pulled from the Logan movie.
But to give you an idea, Logan, very much kind of the same thing. A character dealing with not only his impending mortality, but also dealing with just the mental baggage and shit he's dealt with over this whole time that's taken a weight on him. And I feel like comparing it to Logan, I feel they did that better. Granted, there was like 3 characters they really focused on for backstory in that, as opposed to 6 in this.
Right.
So, but I feel like if they didn't lean so heavy into the horror aspect and just try to develop, like I feel the backstories in themselves were traumatizing or air quotes horror-esque enough. If you just focused on that, like give me like a 5-minute backstory of like, we have Iliana, who was basically a child, a Russian child sex slave. Like that's horror. That's horror by itself for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. Give us more of that aspect. Give us that. Give us the fact, like for instance, basically Roberto's story is Rogue's story in the beginning, where she is, she kissed her, she had her first kiss and fucking
accidentally killed somebody.
Oh, almost killed. I think she wanted to kill him.
She did not kill him, but Roberto did.
It's effectively the same thing, but like we should have gotten that flashback of not him in the pool. We should have got that flashback of him being happy. He's up there, he's happy. It's his first time. He's about to go all the way, and then he gets excited and literally just sets her on fire. Have him be taunted by that like night after night, and then just have him show him like the days of what's going on with that kind of stuff, or like the fact of like his father. Sam's fought like Sam killing an entire mine of people. Have that shit taunt them multiple times in the movie and just show the effect of what that does in them day to day. Like I feel like that would have been a better approach to the movie from the horror aspect.
I can understand that
than being what it was. And again, I'm more so. I guess I'm rating the movie lower in I have an issue with it because I feel like it was good. It was a good movie and it had a good potential. It was just. I feel like they squandered the potential by focusing on trying to be too many things at once, as opposed to just trying to be a couple things really good. I feel like it could have just did it a little bit better.
I understand. I agree. I will agree with that. And like, could they have done things better? Yes. Am I going to deduct points because I feel like they could have done things better than they didn't? No, I'm not. Because to me, the movie overall was still entertaining. It checked the box for entertainment. It checked the box for replay value. Like I watched it 2 days in a row, and it was just as entertaining. It was just as entertaining today as it was yesterday.
No, I absolutely watched it twice in a row. I watched it yesterday, and then I watched I basically watched twice. I watched like 90 minutes of it, or like 90% of it, day before yesterday, and then I watched the whole thing again.
Like I do have certain when I watch a movie, I have certain check boxes that I check off to determine if I feel like it's a good movie or not. Now I do agree with they could have done things like instead of showing us the one scene of Sam walking down the mine shaft, seeing his dad, and then rocketing himself back into a washing machine, and whatever. You could have still had that, but then also had him every time he came out of a room and into a hallway or something, give him little flashbacks of that mining shaft and make him more hesitant to just even be in the hallway. Because at that point, if you're that traumatized about what happened in a mine shaft and it all happened because you were claustrophobic and stuff, have that character start getting claustrophobic in hallways, because a hallway is just like a mining shaft. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that they definitely could have done.
I gotcha.
To make it bring the point across a little bit stronger. And for instance, kind of the same thing. It should have been, the horror aspect should have been her when she falls asleep at night. She's making them relive their dreams.
Now, do you
or their worst fears every night?
Do you feel like this movie would have been slightly better, in your opinion, if instead of it being an hour and a half long movie, which it's listed as, if they bumped it up to that 2-hour movie mark? I
don't think it needs to be 2 hours. But it definitely, if they focus more on character development side, instead of going, like what I mentioned, doing it more doing the horror more through character development, I guess, and gave it an extra 15 minutes, I definitely think it would have been more impactful. Well,
that was going to be my question: is if they added more of these, a little bit more time to each character's backstory, and gave it the extra half hour, do you think it would have been a better movie?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely say that, if long as it wasn't edited. But I do, yeah, sure. Given if it's had the same quality of editing it did in the movie here. Yeah, that's
because I do agree, especially with Roberto. The only thing we got was the fact that he said that he burnt his girlfriend, and then burnt husks showed up in a pool. I do feel like we should have gotten the flashback of. Same thing with Sam doing that.
Same thing with Sam. He literally he shotgunned himself into a wall, and then he was holding a piece of coal. That's all we got.
Well, no, we saw Sam walk down the mine shaft, and then he.
Well, no, I'm saying we saw that, but we didn't see him rocketing himself out of the mine shaft, and then him looking back and seeing this mine shaft caved in. Right. As you have people reaching out for him, yelling his name. That would have been more crazy. Or him walking down the same mine shaft, but it's empty, and you have it's caving in. You have all these hands of all these dead miners reaching out and grabbing them. That would have been a more impactful thing. Where every night, he falls asleep and he's reliving that every night, and every night it gets progressively worse and worse and worse. And we just see and then basically use the nighttime when everybody's asleep to feel the horror, or whenever Danny's asleep, use that time to feel the horror, and then use the time that they're awake to show the resulting actions of that. So use them, during they're spaced out during the day. They're just emotionally drained. They're snapping at each other. They're, all this, because they're going through all this trauma again. They start shutting down. And that would prompt the doctor more so to be like, well, we need to figure out what's going on, and then, the common denominator is, well, this all happened when she showed up. So now we're going to deep dive on her and see why is this happening now, where, all the kids are starting to shut down. Even my best students are starting to shut down. Why is this happening? And they start deep diving into it more and more and more and more and more, and that's what they find out. Oh shit, this is what's happening. And you can even have more scenes where throughout this whole time, show that strong bond with her and Rain. Throughout the whole time, Rain's been there right there with her. All the other kids, snap at her and whatever, and start slowly blaming her, saying, this is your fault. This didn't happen before you showed up. And then no matter what, Rain stuck with her the entire time. And then you find that out.
The thing is, I kind of liked that aspect of the fact that the other kids didn't necessarily.
Most of the kids were either indifferent or were overall helpful, which is fine. They were all indifferent or overall helpful.
The only one, of Danny,
exactly.
Except for
I know.
Iliana.
I'm not saying don't be inclusive. I'm just saying like as the time goes on, like that's like the apex, that's the peak, right? You have these kids who have not had a good night's sleep in weeks, make it up like weeks or months, however long they've been there. They have had a good night's sleep since she showed up because every night they're being tormented. And even during the day now, it's starting to happen during the day, and they start making the nightmares progressively more real. Where like they're starting to get hurt, like then start bringing in that stuff, and then you have like the kind of the whole like you have the whole even if you don't show them turning on her, you have the whole speech of like with the doctor going, "Why do you care? She's the cause of all your pain. She's doing this." And had that moment where everyone's kind of thinking, like, they all kind of look at her and they start, they have like that moment of hesitation where they're thinking, like, that's true. Like, she is causing this. The doctor tries to flip it back on her and say, she's causing all your pain. Why are you trying to stop me? And then throughout that whole, no matter what, like, Rain's right there with her by her side, being like, no. And then all the kids come together, like, no, that's not what's happening. And then everything else could have played out the way it was. I just think that would have been a more impactful movie for multiple reasons. But, I mean, this movie is not bad. Like, I'm criticizing it, but I'm criticizing because I like it. I think that's one of the things I like to at least try to do in like SU, right? Like, maybe I'm wrong. Call me out about it if I'm not in the chat, email, whatever. But I do think, like, if a movie I like, I try to look and see how it could be better or how I could, I tend to pick apart movies that I like more than movies I don't like. Just because I feel like there was something there. Like, you're not going to see. I'll
vouch for you. I do get just having this conversation with you, and how much you have to say about the movie. I can tell it is a movie that you did enjoy, and you're just trying to express what could be different to make it more enjoyable.
Right. So, like, just kind of like
when we did Life After
Beth,
you didn't really have a whole lot to say about the movie.
I mean, what is there to say about Life After Beth?
There's a lot.
Same thing. I mean, same thing about like VFW.
Aubrey Plaza is a saint. Okay.
No, she was a saint in that other movie.
That's also true. Same, the little witch was a nun.
Yeah, but like, I mean, even like VFW, like when we talked about last time, like VFW, like it wasn't
not a good movie.
It wasn't a great movie. Like I said, it's a movie you put on and you do other shit. It's a fine background movie. That's fine. Do I think this movie deserves a 5? The 5.3 it has on IMDb? Absolutely not. Am I gonna say this movie is like a 9 or a 10 in my book? Probably not. I think I would say, given what we got, I put it somewhere like mid-7.
All right. Do you have another bullet point of criticism towards the movie? Like,
I think I kind of
points.
I had 4, and I think I kind of brought all of it up at one time because it was like pacing, the tone, the character development, and like the horror cliched aspects of everything being in there for no reason.
Let's jump over to Rob. Rob, you just finished watching the movie today with me, and you have a little bit of knowledge of some of the characters in the X-Men comics. I presume you read X-Men comics, when we were younger.
Yeah.
Now, what did you think of the movie overall? And what things would you have changed? Did you have gripes with the movie? What are your thoughts in general?
I liked it overall.
Matilda is also not happy about the Demon Bear.
I liked it. I enjoyed it. I didn't have any problems with it until Devin started talking, and then I was like, hey, yeah, why didn't they do that? Hey, yeah, that would have been better. God damn it, Devin. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with Devin. Like, it would have been better if they had, like, did that more of a, like, okay, because, like, I was thinking about it because Sunspot is the burning in the pool, and then she's like, in the pool, she's like, it's okay, you won't burn me, and he just immediately touches her. And then too, when they're running from the bear, they're like, you need to take Danny and go. And he's like, he hesitates for half a second, and then they're like, you won't burn her. I would have brought that up again and have him be like, no, last time somebody said that, I burned them. So, but like, he just immediately grabs her and starts to run. It's like, none of these things like really affected them. And it would have been better if it had. Previous to me thinking about it, I thought it was right, except that it clearly was not a horror movie, which is what I was expecting from the previews. Both previews I saw made it look like a horror movie.
Right.
And it's more just like a regular X-Men action movie with monsters that they're fighting.
Now, do you agree that if they had tagged on an additional half hour to try to get some of these extra background things in and extra little concepts of the paranoia and the growing not the growing realism of these events of these nightmares, but the growing urgency of these nightmares. Do you think the extra half hour would have benefited the movie?
Probably yes.
Okay. So do you also feel like there was a pacing issue in the movie with
No.
with what was shown?
Not a pacing issue, no. But like I wish there was more like in depth of the backgrounds. But with what they've got, I thought it was all right.
Okay.
Like I wasn't like, oh my god, it's going too fast or it's going too slow. It's just like okay.
Right.
But
see, I think that's why I looked at it as. I think that's why I looked at it as I didn't have a pacing issue with what they did show, because essentially you're trying to get 6 different kids' stories into one movie.
Yeah.
And you're trying to, keep this movie at a reasonable length, know.
But like I said during the movie, some of them weren't that interesting in the comics. Their backgrounds weren't even like Sam never killed his parents. I'm sure, as far as I'm aware, that his parents are even still alive today in the comics.
His family has really bad luck, if I'm not mistaken. But like, they're not. I think they're all alive. They just have really bad luck, if I remember correctly.
It's just yeah. And like I said, I know he also has a little sister with powers. She's in Generation X. She's Husk.
Oh, in the comics, he was from Kentucky, Rob, not Kansas.
Oh, really? I thought he was from Kansas.
No, Sam Guthrie was born in Cumberland, Kentucky.
That damn shifting accent.
Yeah, I asked Donnie. I was like, "Does everybody from Kentucky talk like this, Donnie?"
Donnie's like, "I've never heard that accent a day in my life."
He was like, "This is a little bit insulting."
Yeah.
Yeah, that like I don't understand why they like embrace act. Like this is a shout out for all movies, right? If you write an accent into your script for a character, and you see the person can't hold the accent the whole time, just drop the accent. Like people lose their accents all the time. Just drop the accent. It will ultimately end up better.
Stop.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. Like you said, I mean, Sam. I mean, he worked his coal according to Wikipedia now. Sam worked the coal mine that his father had worked before he died. His dad did die, just not due to Sam. And he was trapped in a coal mine, a collapsing mine shaft, with a coworker, and his power manifested, and he unconsciously rocketed him and the coworker out of the mine shaft, saving both of them. And that's really all they had to say about early on Cannonball. Other than that, he was approached by a member of the Hellfire Club to attack the New Mutants. And when he was ordered to kill the New Mutants, Sam rebelled and assisted the New Mutants, and then Xavier asked Sam to join the New Mutants under the alias Cannonball. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much early on Sam origin story. Hey, but you know what? When you have a comic franchise that has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of characters, not all of them are going to have super compelling backstories. Because you know what? Not all superheroes are going to have a compelling backstory.
Well, to be fair, Webby, I mean, I think a lot of the X-Men's backstory, in most cases,
You shut your whore mouth. You watch what you say about my X-Men.
No. I like the X-Men. we were talking about earlier. How about D&D backstories before we started this, and I was like, I'm sure I was going to say it before we started this, but I forgot. One of probably the most hated things I do in a backstory sometimes, which I mean, I actually just generally like doing it. Some people, DMs may not like it. Webby may be one of the. I think it's sometimes one of those DMs where I will say my character doesn't have much of a backstory because this story is his backstory. Like this is his first notable thing happening. He's a fresh baby face, right? Like, and I feel a lot of the X-Men, that is kind of their backstory. Like their backstory is them becoming X-Men.
Yeah, I get that, and I mean, so from a D&D perspective, I don't remember who I was just having this conversation with. It was either Rob or Donnie, I feel, and it was recent. It was the last couple of days. I don't remember now. All my days are blurring together. I think I smell burnt toast. Anyway,
Yeah.
I was saying, yes, as a DM, do I like my characters having a backstory? Yes. Do I want you to have this big elaborate backstory where you're like you're the hero, blah blah blah, of this big thing that happened? Bandits attacked your town and you protected everybody. No, because you're level 3 when you start, generally speaking. And
that's
so
why
it's like,
I always hate writing.
If you have this backstory
backstories
where you're this big epic hero of your town.
Like I killed the giant when I was 10 years old.
Well, that's cool. I'm gonna DM slap you the hell down because now you're not nearly that cool. So you're level 3. Good luck with those kobolds, and hopefully they don't kill you. Like, it's strange. And I mean, you're 100% right. You could just literally have this podunk. I was a farmer until one day I picked up a pitchfork because this goddamn gargoyle and these vampires came. This fucking
random door appeared in the middle of my town and led to a dungeon.
And
I don't know what happened. This guy kept asking me riddles.
Yeah, 100%. You are right. Yes, and like that's where your story begins, is becoming an adventurer. That to a lot of adventurers, that's the moment, that's the highlight. You know what I mean? That's where it all kicks off. But like, as a DM, I still want to know, when I ask for a backstory, it's mainly give me some relationships in your life before you chose this adventuring life, so I have stuff to throw in front of you later on.
I wasn't working.
And that's why everybody always chooses that. Everyone I ever loved is dead. It's like, okay.
That it's not okay. I do not do that very frequently.
Lots of people do though.
But no, I'm saying but sometimes you give me shit about my backstories. Like
I'm not stating as a DM.
Webby
I'm not
was
saying
feeling
that
a
you
certain
guys
type
are
of way
of
about a recent backstory I written because it wasn't for one of his games. He was like, "Oh, I see how it is."
That's true. Yes, I 100% agree. I felt slighted that I felt like you put a lot more thought and effort into the backstory of that game that I was not DMing than you have for any backstory you've ever given me for my games. But I know you as a player have put a lot of thought into your characters. You've just never put thought to paper for me.
True.
That was where I felt slighted.
That's where I usually come in. But okay, no, you're wrong. The most backstory I've ever given you for a character is Roy. I wrote a fucking 45. It was like an 8-page questionnaire with like 300 questions.
Yeah, you essentially sat down and you just wrote. You had a questionnaire that you filled out as Roy, but
the questionnaire I kind of wrote I was gonna write an actual book, but I kind of very quickly abandoned that because I was like, I'm not gonna have any free time to do that.
Right, but I'm saying
my original intention was gonna write a book for Roy's backstory.
As far as story of his backstory, who his sire was, what he was as a ghoul, what he was as a mortal, what his family was. We've only talked about it. You have never put it to paper and given it to me in paper.
I feel like that's not true.
I do not have a file on my computer that says Roy's backstory.
I feel like that's not true.
I'm telling you 100% it is.
I feel like that's
You've given me the questionnaire. that may have answered. No, don't get me wrong. The questionnaire may have covered all of those various topics.
I'm going to Roy's folder right now. I feel like that is not true.
I'm telling you right now, I don't have it in my Vamp folder under you guys. So that's all I'm going to say. But I digress. But again, going back to the characters' backstories, you're right. Not every character is going to have a great backstory. You know, as far as any further characters that I DM for, you know, I'm sure DMs are sick of the Batman backstory. That's all I'm going to say. I'm an orphaned little rich boy. It's like, okay, that's cool. I'll just resurrect your parents as zombies and make you fight your parents as zombies. See ya.
Wait, you don't have this? You don't have this file?
Probably not. If it's an actual written out thing, I don't have. I've seen the questionnaire. That's all the thing I've seen from Roy.
Huh.
Also, on a side tangent / note, DM wise, tell me as players if you disagree with me on this. A player who gives almost nothing as a backstory to a DM, me as a DM, I use that to draw you into further stories, to use as plot hooks, to try to keep you guys compelled. I try to tie in backstories. So if a character doesn't give a DM fucking jack all, then they're kind of putting their own right foot in a grave as far as, oh, well, what's my motivation for being here? That's not my job as a DM. It's your job as a player to find out why you're here. If your character doesn't know why the fuck you're in this party, then your character should probably leave the fucking party. Like, am I wrong in thinking that? Isn't that part of a backstory? Like, isn't that the whole reason of a backstory? Like, if I don't have plot hooks to keep you compelled, it's not because I haven't tried. It's because you haven't given me anything that you're emotionally attached to invest you into the story. I mean,
this is what I'll say about that, right? Because I mean, I think I definitely have some. This is what I would say about that. I would say this. I do believe that if you are the type of character or player that would requires your DM to like sync, have like hooks that that gives you hooks to like, so you're incapable of sinking your teeth into the story without something from the DM to like really, you know what I mean, like draw you in. Then I think that is on you, right? But like, if you're the type of person who can, let's say, like find a random NPC or a Minotaur in the world and like give him a hat, and then he's like the most important thing in your life,
right?
I mean,
which you have
that's
done.
fine.
And that's true. Like, as a DM,
if you're capable of doing that, as a player, then I think it's okay if you don't necessarily go completely and like give a backstory. It just really depends on your character.
That's fine if you latch onto an NPC.
No, I'm saying it depends on you. If you're the kind of person who's like, well, I have nothing to invest in the story, so I'm going to sit on this call and shut up because Webby's not giving me anything to DM, like for me to care about. If you're as a player are incapable of caring about what's going on in the game because your DM hasn't given you anything per se, then I think it's on you to give your DM some plot hooks to give you, right? But if you can sit there and find interest in the game without necessarily needing plot hooks, so like you find an NPC you like and you latch onto that NPC and you make the DM you force the DM to kind of make that interaction, I think it's okay if you sit down and you don't maybe have like a backstory that's fleshed out with like 5 or 6 NPCs or 5 or 6 people or even 3 or 2, however many people, right? You don't necessarily have to have that if you can find a connection in the game yourself. But I feel like if you're not capable of doing that, then you definitely need to do that because then you have no room to complain. If that makes sense. I think Rob understands what I'm saying.
And Rob, what were you going to say?
I was going to say it depends on you as a person. Because, like, I prefer to have things in my backstory that the DM can latch onto. Like, I like it to be personalized to me. But I can also do it the other way around because Austin didn't ask me for a backstory in the slightest and just kind of threw me into the game. like, okay, well, I'm like, well, what am I doing? Okay, I'm going to try. I have a ship. I'm going to try to repair it. That's kind of like the basis of my background, and that's it. But like, I can still do that, like, be invested in the story. What am I doing to try to get the ship? I'm trying to find crew by interacting with the NPCs to build up a crew. Like, I might have that mouse folk woman as part of my crew now. But like, but I prefer it, like, if it's more like personal things that come up. Like, oh my gosh, I wrote that. Like, that's somebody that I knew, and now they're a part of this big story. Like, that's fun to me. Like, oh, okay, they took this character and they made this. So usually when I do a backstory, I leave like a couple things open for the DM to latch onto if he wants to. And if he doesn't, it's no big deal. It's like, okay, well, they didn't go with that. That's fine, whatever. That could just not come up ever again. No. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's always a way to, like, but if you're not doing a backstory in your own ways to be a part of the story, like, if you don't give part of the story so that they can pull you in and you're also not trying, it's like, that's all on you.
And you're like, also complaining about it, that's on you.
Okay, now as a DM, what would you do with that player?
I mean, I think if you have faith in the player to be able to to make their own connections that they want to make in the game, you just DM. You just DM, you populate your world, you do as you do, and it's up to them. That's what we're saying. Like, if they're not capable of interjecting themselves into your world and making roots themselves, then yeah, backstories need to happen, or they just need to shut up. Like, it's that simple, right? Or they need to get out of the game.
Well, see, that's the thing.
If they're just going to sit there and not contribute week after week, then they need to leave. But if they're people who are capable of just latching on to something that they like in the world that they find or whatever, and like if you have a player that sits down with no backstory, and they sit down and they find a town, they're like, hey, you know what? I kind of like this town that you're describing. I want to open up a
noodle shop.
A noodle shop here, right? I want to open up a noodle shop here, and then you're like, what do I have to do with a noodle shop? Like, well, you need license. How do I get license? If they're willing to do that, and they're willing, and then like from that point, now you have a route. You can start having issues with their cart or issues with their noodle shop, and you have that. If they're not capable of doing that, and they're just going to sit there
for me and stuff,
right? Like you have to go through the proper paperwork. You have to buy land. You have to go through the proper paperwork to get all that stuff. You need to show, or if you need a loan from the bank, you need to show them that you can run a business. So you may have to go get a job as an apprentice at a noodle cart before you can, to show them that you know how to make noodles. I mean,
all right,
so there's
our next D&D
whole,
session is going to be Noodle Cart Simulator.
I'm okay with this. Like, I already want to start a noodle
cart. But I mean, it could also
Anthony,
be like, it doesn't have to be focused all on the business. Like, you could be like, okay, you go to the town clerk and he's like, oh, I can get you a license, but I'm really busy because we're dealing with this dragon.
And you're like, dragon, you say, I'll deal with the dragon. If you can put me in the front of the line, I'll deal with your dragon. And whatever. Like, so if you have a player that's like that, that's willing to like do something like that, and it's kind of like outgoing, and then that gives you plot hooks and back and story to intertwine them into your world. Like, oh hey, like they're over here doing something, and they're like, oh hey, let's say I'm just gonna throw out a town name, like Brightfoot or whatever. So let's say their fucking carts, their fucking shops in Brightfoot. They're 4 towns over, and they find out, oh hey, Brightfoot's getting attacked. They may want to be like, well, oh fuck, I need to go back. My noodle shop's under attack.
My
I need to go back.
Shit.
I need to go back. So then, that gives some shit in the group where they're like, well, we need to be here for this mission. You're like, well, I need to go back. Like, I'm not, I need to go protect my shop.
You get back to Brightfoot or whatever, and you find that the town has been burnt down, and you decide that your noodle cart is then going to be a traveling mobile noodle cart.
Yep. The only thing left for your shop is just like the signboard, and you pick it up and you find a wagon and you just put the signboard in the wagon. You're like, this is it, and then you find out that it was a really out of shape, bald, ugly vampire that burnt the town down. And
next time you see him, he's being reprimanded.
You raise your fist to the sky. And you raise your fist to the sky and you swear revenge, and that's how the tales of Noodle Cart Abraham Van Helsing began.
And see, that backstory writes itself through roleplay. Right. I get that. I was more so asking, what would you guys do as a DM? Essentially, if a player didn't want to bother giving you a backstory, didn't feel compelled to fucking interact with any of your NPCs,
then you get them out of the game. Then they don't want to be there.
Yeah, the only thing you can try to do is set them up with a plot hook or two. Like, be like, oh, somebody gives you a mysterious letter. Like, make up your own thing. Okay, say, okay, so this guy's going to be this. But then if they don't latch onto those things, it's like, okay, well, I gave you, like, 2 tries to get you involved in the story, and you were like, nah.
Right.
So, either stay in or don't.
At that point, it becomes a question of you just asking the player, what do you want out of this game?
Right.
What do you want? Do you just care about the combat? Do you just want to be a combat bot? Like, is that what you care about? Do you care about the story at all? And then, they're like, well, I just don't know what I want to do with my character. And then, then maybe you can sit with them and like try to help them figure out what they want to do with their character. But if they're not willing to, if they're just, I don't know, whatever. And they've played D&D before. Like, it's not like their first game. Like, I mean, at that point, it's just kind of like, well, look, I'll be honest with you, you're kind of holding the group back at this point. Like, everybody else is interacting and they have plot lines. I've thrown you a couple lines. You've always just kind of said okay, and instead of having like the improv attitude of okay, and you just kind of went okay, like cool, like all right, oh, the princess of this town has fallen in love with me. I mean, that's fine, cool. I don't care. Like, if you're not going to latch onto that and be like, well, okay, let's do it. Oh, you're a Dragonborn? Oh, by the way, this town's super racist against Dragonborns. Or the king is super racist against Dragonborns. He would never approve of this marriage. That kind of thing. Like, if you're not going to, like, fall into that, you're just going to go like, all right, whatever. I mean, then you need to be like, look, I'll tell you what, this is more of like an RP group. If you want to tap out, that's fine. I'll let you know. If I'm running a group that's more combat focused, I'll let you know, right? That kind of thing. It is like tap out, because that's how some people play role play. Some people don't really care about backstory. They just want to murder hobo.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like, if that's how you play D&D, that's fine. Like, you don't want a backstory. You're just like, I'm here. I show up. I kill things. You tell me what's the next thing I kill. That's the next thing I kill. Like, and they just murder hobo. Murder hoboing is fine. But if you're trying to play a story, if you're trying to play a D&D game with a story, like having a group of people who want to murder hobo, or just like one person in a group of people who want to role play who wants to murder hobo, it will cause friction.
They're basically like that meme I posted of the Scarlet Witch and Thanos, where she's like, "You took everything from me," and he's like, "I don't even know who you are."
Yeah,
because that's what the whole thing. I skipped all the cutscenes, and the final boss is yelling at me, and I'm like, I don't know who the fuck you are.
Yeah,
or
see, like with my style,
like they're trying to build a relationship with the NPCs, and then that guy just runs in, Leroy Jenkins, and just chops his head off. It's like, well, all right.
See, like my DM style too. I try to appease both sides, but at the same time, like I generally, for however long the session is that I run for, I generally try to squeeze in one combat per session, to some degree, to appease the people who enjoy combat versus the people who enjoy roleplay. And that being said, I mean, I won't lie. I like with the roleplay portion of things, I try to like pause and let the players interact with each other, but it feels like sometimes like players don't know when is okay to start talking or if they should. You know what I mean? And I can't force people to interact with each other. So then I just have to move. Then there's like that weird awkward moment, and then I just move the story on. And I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, you can't force people to, like you said, you can't force people to interact. So you just kind of got to do what you can. If people aren't, and you can choose how you want to run the game. If you want to run the game where, like, if they don't bite this plot hook, then it just doesn't happen. Or if they don't bite on this plot hook, it still happens, and later though that may become consequences, right? Like, I mean
we all know that's.
I already know how you're going to run it. I already know. I'm just saying. Like, I'm just giving. Like, I'm just letting people know. Like, that's how you handle those two particular situations, right?
Right.
So you look at it, and I mean, that's kind of what has to be done. But I mean, I would say collectively, for the most part, in most of the groups most of the circles that we're in, it becomes a situation of, yeah, like you said, you try to balance both sides, but I think on either end, on any given day, we're all fine if we have like a session or two in a row that's just RP or just combat. Like that's fine. Nobody's really upset. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there are some people who can't handle a 2-session thing of RP, or can't handle a 2-session thing of combat. It will get boring to them.
Right.
I mean, which I will say, like, if I'm being completely honest, like 2 sessions of D&D combat can get a little boring occasionally. But it's not gonna like I'm not gonna like lose interest. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I get it.
By having like 2 or 3 sessions back to back where it's just nothing but combat. Like, what will quickly take me out of a D&D game, the fastest thing in the world that'll take me out of a D&D game, besides the skill check challenge, is
chaos stuff.
And chaos. Is a just, I guess, an overburdens of, I guess, the use of rules. That is the quickest thing that'll take me out. And what I mean by that is just like, basically, we're sitting here, like Webby runs his games, and most people I know run their games in situations of like, okay, if you're sitting in a room and you're trying to do something, like you're trying to construct something, they, like, like, oh, I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm building a bar. I'm fucking trying to build a bar, right? I open my bar. I'm trying to repair this bar or build a bar. Like in most cases, it's just like, okay, it's a process. It'll take time. That's fine, right? But DMs are like every step of the way, like, oh, that's going to require you to make like 5 check rolls. You have to do it.
Right.
And then, oh, you fucked up. You broke the bar. Now it's going to take 10 rolls. Like, there's DMs that do that. That
roll
just
a perception
make you
check to see where to hit the nails in. Now roll.
Yeah, shit like that. Like that will take me out of a D&D
Yeah,
game
I get
faster
you.
than
I get
anything.
you. Yeah.
Like an overuse of the rules, like try to sit in this stool. Oh, you fucked up. You fell off the stool. Take 1 point of damage. I'm just gonna be like, you know what? I broke my neck.
And
actually.
see, like, I like to try to add certain things that make it a little bit, maybe possibly more challenging for you guys and a bit more realistic. Like, I try to enact sometimes the sleeping in your armor thing. In D&D, the rules pretty much state that if you sleep in your armor, you will not get a good night's rest, therefore you will not get a rest. Especially people in like plate armor. So if you're wearing, if your paladin in your party sleeps in his plate armor, you're not getting a full night's rest. Period. You have to take off your armor. Essentially, when you make camp at night, everybody doffs their armor, which is why they have, time frames for how long it takes to don your armor in case you get attacked in the middle of the night. Now, on occasion, if you're like deep in the heart of fucking Mordor and surrounded by like a million orcs and you know it, but you have to sleep, I might let you sleep with your armor. I might give you, some sort of detriment to the next day. Like I might say, okay, you get all your hit points back, all your spell slots, but you gain a point of exhaustion because it was not a great night's sleep. Something similar to that. But at the same time, I don't sit there and keep track of because I assume that when you camp at night, part of the camping process is mending your armor. So if you were wearing like leather armor and you got into a fight the day before, chances are you were hit with a sword a couple times, so that's going to slice your armor up. You spend that night pretty much mending your armor. I'm not going to make you replace your armor every time you get into a fight, blah, blah, blah. It is assumed on my behalf that you are taking care of your stuff, sharpening your weapons, things like that.
Right, and especially at a higher level, I understand early levels, but at higher levels, like if you're like an archer, it's kind of almost just assumed you have enough arrows. You would be smart enough to replenish your arrows. Where, I mean, usually I don't even keep track of ammunition unless it's an upfront kind of game. I will tell people like, hey, I'm being super strict on kind of the stuff, so you need to keep track of your ammunition. I mean, especially early on, right? Early on, like when it's actually it could be technically become a thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or like collecting your arrows that can be used, right? Right. Things like that. Stuff like that, like usually it's just kind of a hand wave. Now, if you've gone let's say we've gone 10 sessions and we haven't seen even a town, that may come out of being like, hey, by the way, it's time you need to see you probably are running low on arrows. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
But like, base by basis. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, finish your thought because this is completely different.
Oh, you're fine. That's good. I'm good. That was kind of what I
was going to say. I do. None of you guys are archers that I'm aware of in the games that I'm starting to run for you guys on Saturdays.
I am.
Okay.
Not yet.
I
will be using a hand crossbow.
I do require you to keep track of your ammo.
Right. But I get that. Like,
resource thing where it's literally just a checkbox. Just
yeah, I know. So, but I'm saying generally speaking, at higher levels, even most DMs, like when you go into a town, it just kind of presumed you restock up on that because it's such an insignificant amount of money, Right. It's just like you pass through a town, you got some arrows, and they're just basic bolts or basic arrows. It's not so much like you can't find these arrows; they're impossible to find.
Right.
It's more you just have arrows,
With just me, it's more so making sure you have the proper equipment to carry X amount, and then just essentially keeping track of them. If you just, if you want to tell me, every time we go into a town, it's assumed that I get arrows, I'll tell you, okay, every time you go into a town, put your arrows back up to maximum, but take off a gold. Because a gold will give you 20 arrows or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is.
It's one of those things where I do keep track of ammunition, especially at least in people who are like your rangers, people who are specifically archers. Because if that's your bread and butter, and if that's what your character is really good at, and if you're in a fight and you do run out of arrows all of a sudden, well, you got to figure out what you're going to do here. So I've had rangers in other games ask, well, can I start crafting my own arrows during travel time? I said, okay, yeah, they're not going to be great. I might, they might not fly the straightest. I'll have you do a craft roll to see if they're usable, essentially. And that's just to get by, until they do get to a town.
Right. I was saying generally in most cases, if depending on the DM you're with and what's going on in the town, if you're just in a regular campaign, usually you're hitting, usually you're not, you're shooting one. Most people are holding, 1 to 2 quivers, so you're looking at 20 to 40 arrows, give or take.
Right, and you're shooting maybe a handful of arrows in a combat.
Right, and presuming you recover some of those. Usually it's treated in most cases as long as you don't crit one, your arrow is recoverable.
And see, the only reason I do require my players to keep track of their ammunition is because my world is not super populated. And
right.
Not
and that
every
makes sense
town
to the world,
will,
right?
Not every town or village will have a Fletcher. So
and that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
that makes sense. And that's why I said it depends on the world. But I'm saying in the most general of games, in most cases, it's kind of just a hand wave. But if it's not, I let people know ahead of time.
All right, Rob, you can go ahead and change the subject. What were you gonna say?
Actually, this is a perfect example of what I was gonna say. So that's good. But because going all the way back to when you were like, okay, sometimes I hesitate and then people don't roleplay. That was a while ago.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say was one of the things is sometimes I'm especially if it was a different person talking to an NPC, I don't want to step on their toes and be start talking, even though there's things I want to ask. So I kind of wait and see if they're gonna say something first, and then sometimes people don't, or it goes on and whatever. So it's whatever, it's fine. And then sometimes I'm not sure if I'm thinking about what I want to say, and then other things happen or other people start to talk. So that's one of the reasons why I hesitate when there's spaces, because I'm should I say something here? Should I not?
Yeah.
But another thing is this what I'm just talking about right now that just happened is people will sometimes talk, and even though I have something to say, it was so long ago that I'm I don't know if I should comment on that because the conversation has moved way past that point. But I don't want to interrupt or talk over people to be rude. So I'm should I still talk about that thing that we were talking about a long time ago, or should I just let it go? For this, it's fine because, even here, I was should I still talk about that? That's why I just the raised hand in the thing, because I'm we're getting way far away and then we're not even going to remember what the hell I was talking about. But when you're doing role play, it's I was going to say something there, but now the conversation has moved so far beyond that, I don't know that I should bring it up again. So I'm it's should I say something? Should I not? I probably won't. So then whatever I was going to say, that's why like there's blank space, because I'm like, I'm thinking about whether I should bring that back up again, and then I decide no.
Well, see, as a character, something that you could do too is if you remember, okay, well, I did have something I wanted to ask or say, but the conversation has moved beyond that. It's been quite a while since we started talking about that. Then, the next time you make camp for the night or whatever, just mention it to the person or the group. Just be like, hey, earlier we were talking about such and such. I have this to say. But my thing with, like, I don't like to force conversations on player characters, but like at the same time I want to give the opportunity to have it. And I just feel like a lot of the times when I try to give the opportunity for player interaction, everybody just kind of clams up. And like, okay, for instance, with you guys in the last session when you guys were chained up in the room, and then the orcs left, and I said, okay, you guys are alone, essentially. And then nobody really talked. I said, okay, well, after 10 or so minutes, the orc comes back, and then you were like, well, I had something I want to say. I was like, okay, let's rewind then. Like, I try to give that moment of silence for when people want to start talking, and then I'll let the conversation go on until I feel like enough time has passed in game that, if an orc were to come back every X amount of minutes, he's coming back.
Yeah, well, the issue with that was, I think, because you said you have, like, they're gone, if you want to talk, you can. But then people started trying to do things instead of talking. And then after they tried a few things, you were like, well, then after 10 minutes, and that's why I said, oh, I wanted to stop, but because I was waiting for them to finish what they were doing. And then the second time, you didn't give us that pause, and that's why I was like, oh, well, I had something to say. But I was waiting for them to finish what they were doing.
Right.
But
yeah,
that's why
I'm
I
hoping
said that. I wasn't like, Webby, give me time. I was just like, I just wanted to say something.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. Like, always with me as a DM, just tell me, hey, I got something to say to so and so. Before this happens, can I? And then majority of the times I'll say sure. Because especially with this group, it's Kat's first time really playing into a D&D game. I get the sense that Donnie, being, new to having Kat around, isn't going to RP as much early on until you guys get familiar with each other and comfortable around each other enough to, do the role playing aspect of things. So, but
right.
It's one of those things where I try to give opportunities, but I don't want to feel like I'm trying to force it on you guys either. So I try to make it natural, but then it's just like, okay, well, if nothing's happening, I guess I'll just progress time forward. And then I feel like I'm the one who wasted that time. Like, oh, well, I could have just went forward with the story, progressed time, and then we could have, you guys could have essentially gotten out of this orc encampment an hour earlier and then had more time to do different stuff.
Webby, I'll say this, right? I think the thing is, right, it's harder too because we're playing over calls. Like, that's why you're going to get more interruptions. You have to kind of allow for that because it just, like, I know I'm really bad at like interrupting sometimes unintentionally or whatever. I'm really bad at interrupting. And so one of the things like I usually try to do, like, to go back to Rob's point from you made a little bit earlier, is if I'm like somebody's talking and I want to say something, I'll hold it. But if I see the conversation start to shift somewhere else, I'll say, I'll jump in and just say, well, just real quick on what you said a minute ago, blah, 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 and then try to just jump in and say something, but still try to keep it short enough where the person who was talking doesn't kind of forget what they were saying. And try to shift it back. It doesn't always work, but it is what it is. But I mean, I definitely think that's, that's just kind of the downside of not playing in person, right? Like, I think playing in person, you're always going to be able to have, it's a more natural thing. You kind of can see it in somebody's face, like they're thinking about something, or you see that they're looking through their notes. You can see all that's happening.
We should start playing with webcams. I can watch all you motherfuckers.
I'm fine with that. I don't care.
Then every so often when we're playing and I'm watching all you guys and you guys are, Rob's over there role playing with Kat and Donnie. Devin can just hold up a little note that says "Love you, Webby." I'll be like, "Yeah."
I was hoping that was his best as GM. He was like, "No,
Now you take 4d6 psychic damage.
ah."
All you're gonna see is like when other people are talking, us looking at our phones. You're gonna be mad.
I'm usually never looking at
I'll
my
be
phone.
furious.
I'm usually never looking at my phone when I'm on one of these calls. I'm usually looking at my other monitor doing.
If I see
either.
Rob looking down, looking at his phone, I'm just gonna text him, "Get the fuck off your phone, Rob."
I'm usually looking at my other monitor doing something on my other
Listen,
monitor.
I'm looking at my dick. All right.
Well,
He's like, "You want to see? You want to see?"
Elsbeth takes 2 points of unsoakable aggravated damage. Figure that one out.
Okay.
That would be like almost the equivalent of taking like that con stat damage.
Yeah, probably.
It's 2 levels of exhaustion.
I need 2 seconds to fill the dead air.
Rob, we're filling dead air. 2 seconds of filling dead air.
See, now when he says "filled dead air,"
Oh, Rob, I have a question for
he
you.
just vanished and said
Rob,
nothing.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
What's your favorite system to build? Like, what's your favorite character creation in a system?
What do you like? What?
Like,
game?
what system has like your favorite character creation? Yeah.
I would have to go with D&D still.
D&D. Okay, I mean that's fair. I mean,
Although
I think
Vamp
that's
is a close second. I think.
yeah. Vamp is really like I like Vamp, but I mean their character creation is kind of just not basic, but it's kind of it is what it is. Like there's not a whole lot of like it's not convoluted at all. But I think my favorite character creation is probably Aces and Eights, which is a game I've never played on Call of Duty because it's super fucking complicated to play. But only because you can die in character creation.
Oh boy.
What?
Oh boy. I think you've mentioned this before.
I have. It's a game called Aces and Eights, and you can. It's a Western. It's a combo Western game, and you can literally like, basically every time you can like add a bunch of like shit to your character, and so the more OP you make your character, the more you have to roll on this table. But then there's a higher chance of bad shit happening to you along the way. So like, it's a balancing aspect of like you can push your character to be like, to get a bunch of extra like feats and abilities and stuff and be this really a stronger character, but that also comes with like you may be maimed, you may have a disease, you may just die in character creation. Like you push it too far, it's like, oh well, you got your hand cut off and fortunately it wasn't enough damage to kill you in character creation. It's like, well, make a new character.
I was playing Watch Dogs yesterday, and Webby was watching me for a little bit. Some of the characters in there, like you can like recruit anybody, but they all have like different abilities and stuff. I came across 2 people that had Doomed, which was random death, random unpredictable death. I was like, what the fuck kind of power is that?
Yeah, wasn't it like random spontaneous death?
Yeah, random spontaneous death. That's what it said.
Yeah. Fucked up. And then like Rob talked to him or something and then like, set one of them free and then he just died. It was like,
yeah,
okay.
I saved him and then I was looking at him to see if I wanted to mark him as a possible recruit. And it said that, and I was like, nope. And then I was having a firefight with some of the security forces. He ran right in between it. I shot him, and I'm like, well, I guess that was his random death.
All right. So
there's another game that happens. Sorry to cut you off, Robert. There's another game that happens that you can do that into, that you can die in character creation, is Traveler. That's a game I've always wanted to play, but I've never. It's kind of a daunting game. But yeah, because at different points in the game, like you roll for stuff that happens to your character. So like you build your character, and you literally build your character from like the beginning to like there. So you can be building your character, and like you go for a roll of like something that happened, like an event that happened to your character, a life event. You can get in prison for 20 years, and that's gonna like cut you, like it'll take you off the path you were on originally. So like you're like, oh, I want to be like I wanted to be a smuggler or whatever, like because Traveler is about like being in space, right? You're like, I want to be, and like traveling through time and stuff. But it's like, I want to be a smuggler. All right, cool. But you get arrested very early on. You spend 20 years in prison. Like now you get to go in the prison track of skills and learn prison skills, but you're not learning smuggling skills. And then you come out, and then then you pick up from there. But you also can like die, or like you can like you're like, oh, I want to be like a space marine. Like, all right, you're a space marine now. Roll for your 4-year service. Like every 4 years you choose to go in. Like I'm gonna go for 2 4-year terms or whatever. So 8 years. You roll for every 4-year chunk. So to like see what skills you learn, what skill whatever, right? But one of the options is you can die. So you could just like, well, you died. Okay, start over. Roll more stats.
All right. So to get us slightly on track, because
Rob also stepped away too.
What?
Rob stepped away.
Okay. Where is he typing this stuff? Oh, he's typing in the dumbass channel. Should be typing in the general chat. That's where I have usually clicked. Dumbass is usually just for Craig comments. Well, me and you can we can start wrapping this up because we're past the hour and a half mark on this episode. We got off on a D&D tangent.
We've had some short episodes these past few weeks.
So the New Mutants, on a scale from 1 to 10, we'll do the IMDb rating version of it. So first and foremost, Devin, would you recommend to have other people watch this, and what would you rate this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I actually already gave my rating earlier, but yeah, no, I think
you said around a 7.
Yeah, I said it would be like I would give like a mid 7. So like if you wanted to go like IMDb, like you can go like I would give it like a 7, like a 7.3.
Okay.
Or something like that. So a 73 out of 100, if you will, or a 7.5 if you were going to go like in a half-point system. But yeah, I mean, and sure. I definitely think it's worth a watch. I definitely think a lot of the reviews on there do it dirty. They're like, oh, it's pacing, it's this, but they don't really say like what the pacing issue was. Like, I think it did have some pacing issues, but it had pacing issues just because of it was trying to do too many things. But it didn't do any of them badly. It just didn't do any of them particularly great.
Right.
Because of that. But overall, the movie was fine. Like, I was fine with the movie. Like, it kept me entertained the whole time I was watching it.
Yeah.
Both times I was watching it. So, I mean, for sure, like, absolutely. If you like, X-Men movies, or you like superhero movies, and you really like, I would say if you like superhero movies, but you really like, I guess like raw superhero movies, where like they're not really like full-on superheroes, they're just kind of getting into their powers and kind of like learning the edges, you know what I mean? Like they're smoothing out those edges of their powers, if you will. Like, I think this is a good movie, a totally fine movie. Like, it's not the Avengers. Like, like you aren't putting this on. It's not the Avengers, but I mean, it's also not like Logan. It's not, but I definitely think it's if you're gonna like put up in the line of X-Men movies, it's better than X-Men Origin Wolverine by far. Which one of the reviews on IMDb, you know what? I'm gonna find that review because that review pissed me off. Because this guy, I was like, bro, you don't even have good taste. Like you don't even have good taste. You don't have the ability to rate this movie. But yeah, go ahead.
So I have a few reviews here.
All right, here I got the review. I found the review I was talking about, by the way. But you go ahead.
All right, so this person said, worse than I expected. I went in with low expectations and yet still left disappointed. I'd like to say something positive, but I really can't think of anything right now. The plot, dialogue, characters, acting, cinematography, lighting, everything was just awful. I don't usually take notes of accents in movies. If the characterizations are fine, then I usually just gloss over them. It says a lot that I even noticed how bad and inconsistent these were. The backstories were glossed over and only partially explored for the most part, with glaring holes in most of them. The hospital setting was not set up, explained, or even logically consistent. If you don't know who's behind it with a certain name drop, then you won't get any answers here. The movie was just bad, and a waste of time, a waste of your time. Watch literally anything else. Go for a walk, play with your dog, live life. Don't watch this. Was one of the bad reviews on this.
I mean, the only thing I agree with is I never saw Logan, so I had no idea who those people were. And it's till you explained it to me.
Right.
So, yeah, I could see how somebody could be lost about who was behind it all, but does it really matter that much?
No, it doesn't, right? It doesn't. But let me read this beautiful.
Okay, go ahead.
A 2 out of 10. One of the worst superhero movies ever. This guy has terrible taste, and he knows it in the first line.
And what is this one regarding?
This is, what do you mean?
Which movie is this review for? The New Mutants?
The New Mutants.
Okay.
He says right in the first line that he knows that he has terrible taste. Because he goes, yeah, I'm going to get downvoted for this, but I honestly believe this is the worst. This is worse than Suicide Squad. It's not.
This is from Danis, right?
Yep, from Danis. The acting is awful.
Yep.
The CGI looks bad. The characters are unlikable. Tons of plot holes, and the logic is all screwed up. I could go on all day, but I've only seen the first X-Men movie, Origins Wolverine, which I need to rewatch, to be honest. Pause. Okay.
If you feel like you need to rewatch X-Men Origins Wolverine, there's something wrong with you in the head, and I think you need to be at this fucking institution being tested. Now, with that being said, I will state the beginning parts of X-Men Origins Wolverine
is good.
Spot on.
The first like 20 minutes.
Spot
solid
on.
Movie.
Like pretty much literally the origins of Wolverine.
Yeah.
Spot on from the graphic novel.
It takes the hardest nosedive in the history of the world.
Yeah, hard. It takes a hard left into a brick wall.
Also, too, the travesty that is this, X-Men Origins Wolverine has a 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb compared to New Mutants with their fucking 5.3. No.
I 100%. I would watch how long is X-Men Wolverine? Okay, if I would watch the first quarter to a half of X-Men's Origins Wolverine again, and then shut the movie off, I would be content with that half of the movie. But honestly, I would rather watch this movie again over that.
I would watch this movie 1,000 times. I would almost. And I'm not saying
Life After Beth?
I would almost rewatch Life After Beth before I would watch X-Men Origins Wolverine in its entirety. Almost. And that's also saying something. Because Life After Beth is bad, but it's not offensive.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Flat out offensive.
Let me ask you this. If I forced you to pick A or B to sit down and watch 2 movies with me, okay? Category A is The New Mutants and Life After Beth. Category B, X-Men Wolverine Origins.
Okay.
And the Green Lantern.
Oh, fuck that. No. I will take the first one all day.
Yes.
God, the Green Lantern is... But that's 2 bad movies, though.
Aubrey Plaza's a saint.
You put 2 bad movies in the second column, though. Like, if you were like...
I was trying to compensate for how much you really dislike Life After Beth.
I don't, but, I mean, dude, that's, 2 bad movies, though. You put a bad movie, and then, an enjoyable movie, and then you put 2 really bad movies. If you were honestly, if you were all right, Life After Beth and New Mutants or X-Men Origins Wolverine and I don't know, let's pick a random movie off of a list here.
I will say, hold on,
2020 movies. All right, 2020 movies.
I have
IMDb.
2 more. I have 2 more really short bad reviews for this movie.
Actually, you know what? No, I can tell you definitively a movie that 10 out of 10 times I will rewatch Life After Beth over rewatching this movie. There is a movie that exists definitively that I can tell you that. And it is the Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Dolittle.
Never seen it.
That movie was ass. John Cena's The Polar Bear did not save that movie. That movie was ass.
Never seen it.
Yeah, John Cena voices the Polar Bear. Movie's still ass.
So real quick, this guy gave a 0 out of 10. He said, however, to make this movie go up to a 1 or a 2 out of 10, take LSD because it increases the experience. Here at SU, we do not recommend that you take LSD before watching movies, but if you're an adult,
if you're an adult and you're sitting in front of your movie, in front of your TV, and it happens to be a bag of mushrooms,
and you eat an M&M, what you think is an M&M, but it's a
handful
of mushrooms, That's
go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
The other real quick review is a 1 out of 10. It says would perhaps appeal to teenagers, but not to anyone with a discerning opinion. Inappropriate for young teens and too abysmal.
Not really.
And too
Not
abysmal
really.
for
Like,
anyone over 18.
Not inappropriate for young teens. Like, what?
I don't.
What? What's inappropriate for young teens in this movie?
I don't understand anything that's inappropriate for young teens in this movie.
Like
the
literal fourth of a second of side boob.
Yeah, the shower scene. Yeah, you get that
like the fourth of a second of side boob and like the 2 second kiss.
They're probably talking about the scary monsters, guys, not the.
I mean, to be fair though, the scary monsters like
this guy gave a 1 out of 10 rating. He said, "See, this is why movies like these should not be PG-13. This should have been rated R." Like, what?
For what though? For what though? What does we have gained being R? You wanted to see
understand.
You want I mean, okay.
I guarantee it's because it had the lesbian kiss. Because any type of gay stuff in a movie automatically no. I feel like what he's saying is that why is this movie like these should not be PG-13? It's either that, it is titled UGG, like, so I'm assuming it's what Rob's thinking, but that can go either way of like, I'm really upset this movie, like for instance, like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Good movie, but I think it would have did a little bit better with an R rating, but I mean, it was for kids. It was for a kid movie, so I
That's because it was a kid's book.
Right. I mean, I'm saying I understand why it's PG-13, but also at the same time, your audience aged with the book. So
I mean, fair.
You could have made it R-rated, and it would have been like more impactful.
See,
but
I read these reviews before I watched this movie, which is why I find these reviews hilarious now, because I 100% disagree with these guys' reviews. Like this guy, 1 out of 10 makes Batman and Robin and Batman Forever look like a masterpiece.
George Clooney had fake nipples. George Clooney had rubber nipples. No.
Worse than Mulan 2020.
That's probably true. Well, no, that's not true. Mulan 2020 is worse than this movie. Mulan 2020 was terrible. Travesty of a movie for a variety of reasons that I'm not getting into right now. So this movie was better than Mulan. I spoke too soon. But yeah. Fuck Mulan 2020. Anyway, okay.
See, hold on.
7 out of 10. Better than people are admitting.
Hold on. My biggest gripe. It seems like almost every other review that I'm seeing is plot hole this, bad plot hole this, plot hole.
But they're not explaining anything.
Plot holes you could drive a truck through. No one is giving an example because I don't think they can find one.
There's not. They're just shitting on a movie.
Holes.
They're just shitting on a movie because two girls kissed.
I honestly, I feel like that's what it is.
It is.
I don't
100%
feel.
That's 100% what it is.
Knowing the characters from comic book source material, and even not knowing the characters, I don't feel like you could watch this movie, walk out, and be confused about the movie. They answered all the questions that were there. Like, oh, well, where did the demon bear come from? It was brought there by fucking Danny. You know, it's her manifestation of fear, and it's her like her scary bear. Right. You know, because everybody has two bears inside of them. That was the beginning and the end.
Yep. I mean, and that's been a Native American legend for years.
And like you said, could they have added things to make the movie better? Sure, but I do not feel like there are any plot holes in this movie. There are no
plot holes. I think there are definitely spots in the plot that are thin and like glossed over, but there's no plot holes. Like this review here, this is a 3 out of 10. I feel it's a sensible review. It just means this person didn't like the movie, but that's okay. So they said this movie has been pushed a lot of times, and every time it got pushed, I'd be frustrated because I thought it looked different from the trailer. It looked different from the trailer, and it'd take a different approach to the X-Men series. They're like, yeah, it did, but not in the way I was expecting. I found the movie in the beginning to be quite boring. The first half to be a little bit empty. and they really didn't like the fact there really wasn't a villain except for the bear. Like there wasn't really like a villain you could point to and be like, this person's bad. Like they hinted at the Doctor, but not really. Like, and I can agree with that point. But then they go on to say this movie should have been pushed back, to 20 Infinity. It just never came out. Which, I don't agree with because I enjoyed the movie. But for that being a review, like those are at least you pointed to stuff you didn't like in the movie. I can understand that. I get, that's fine. You just didn't like the movie. That's fine. But when you're literally dropping like a 1 out of 10 going plot holes, and that's your review, like I can't take you seriously. Like 1 out of 10, really, Hollywood. The most remarkable thing about this film is that they managed to make Maisie Williams not charming on any level. I didn't think that was possible.
I'm sorry, reread that last part. I'm reading another review.
The most remarkable thing about this film is that it managed to make Maisie Williams not charming on any level. I didn't think that was possible. 1 out of 10.
See, I don't feel that way.
I feel like at the beginning, I definitely feel in the beginning she was stiff. Like the role was very stiff, but that was kind of the character. But she was.
Yeah. I think everybody played their character.
I guess.
Well,
I guess I can say this. I feel at the beginning, up until the bell tower scene, I think Maisie Williams did come off as stiff, but it didn't look like she was like the character was stiff. Like Maisie Williams was playing a character that was stiff, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I understand that part, but that was like maybe 30 minutes in the movie. Like after that, she was fine.
Okay, I'm gonna read a good review.
Hold on, Webby. This is a great review. Hold on, 1 second. 1 out of 10. Whoever made this movie is a dumb idiot that makes bad movies. I hate magic.
Okay.
That's the review.
Well, all right. We're going to end on this review because I want to end on the reviews on a good note. This person gave 7 out of 10. Finally, after 3 years, I saw it, and I must say I really enjoyed it. The movie starts off quite well. However, it definitely falls flat a bit at the end. But it's entertaining and worth watching. It has a decent length, and it's well made, and it has a good plot. As for the concept of horror, meh. It's not really horror. It has a little bit of horror, but nothing spectacular, and I wouldn't put it under the category of horror. I loved all the characters, especially the character of Magic. It's a shame that we won't see these characters and their stories anymore since it is the closing chapter of the X-Men saga with Fox. Probably all of the delays that occurred with the movie affected it in one way or another, especially because most of the people will expect too much and be disappointed. But give it a chance and enjoy it for what it is. At least it's way better than X-Men Dark Phoenix. So, that's a solid review. I like that review. And she gave it a 7 out of 10.
X-Men Dark Phoenix was some cheeks.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I was highly disappointed with X-Men Dark Phoenix.
I feel like every time they've adapted the Phoenix story, they've failed.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It's not that hard.
Honestly,
the comic is well received.
The cartoon did it the best.
They did, and that's sad. That was the mid 90s?
Yeah, it was the 90s.
I just want my Australian Wolverine back.
So, with this being said, we're reaching a 2-hour mark here. So you gave it a 7.3, 7.5, and would recommend.
Yep.
Rob, what would you rate this movie, and would you recommend it?
I would give it an 8, and yes.
Okay, I'm probably giving it right around an 8 as well with Rob. I did not think it was spectacular, but to me, it checked off all of the boxes for a decent movie, along with rewatchability. Again, I've watched this movie twice in the last 2 days, and if I had to sit down because somebody else hadn't seen it yet, and they wanted to tomorrow, I would probably be okay with watching it again. It is an entertaining movie in my aspect, in my opinion, and it does check off all those boxes, so I do recommend. With that being said, we do need getting real with Rob. What do you got, Rob? What kind of science mumbo jumbo you got for us today? Black holes, solar eclipses, solar flares. One of the characters in this movie had solar powers. Do you have anything solar for us?
Yes, actually.
Do you think it'd ever be possible for gene splicing to create werewolves?
No.
Okay.
You might be able to create her half wolf, half human, but they would be there'd be no way to shift back and forth.
Okay.
But yeah, her hybrid form might be possible, maybe someday. Not now. But,
all right.
Solar flares bad. We're actually approaching a high activity because the sun goes through cycles, and we're currently approaching a high activity cycle for the sun, where it's going to be more solar flares and stuff. But it's natural, but it kind of sucks because it can knock out satellites and stuff like that. It's not too big of a danger as long as the Earth's magnetic field isn't weakened, because it works to protect us from stuff like that. The flares hit the magnetic field and they're drawn into the core, so they don't really affect us. If we only things that are above the magnetic field, like satellites and the ISS, would be in danger from it. So no need to worry. Although it could knock out your satellite TV or the GPS on your car. So, but that's all. I didn't really read anything too sciencey. I did read something, but I can't remember what it was. I did prepare for this, but then I totally forgot because I've been looking up I actually put a thing in the chat about the why it was rated what it's rated and why people said it shouldn't have been rated PG-13. Because I was looking for that. So
yeah, you're putting all this stuff in the dumbass chat, which is where I don't look.
Oh, I didn't realize I was still in dumbass chat.
Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, so if you guys want to look at that later, that's it.
All right.
But yeah.
All right. And with that, we'll go to Devin. Do we have any life advice with Devin?
Yep. A wise shirt once told me to always lawyer up, delete Facebook, and hit the gym. There you go.
All right. I will go with. I have something. For those of you who have seen or the New Mutants movie, this will make some sense. For those of you who have not, go watch the movie and then it'll make more sense. But mine is feed the right bear.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Very important.
That's all.
Also, I love where Devin's getting his life advice from.
Where? Oh, shirts?
He also, he posted it in the dumbass chat too.
Oh, you're getting it from washing instructions on clothing? Well, all right, fair enough.
I said a wise shirt once told me.
All right. Well, with that being said,
also, if you want less general life or more general life advice besides the shirt, never put your hand where you wouldn't put your willy. There we go.
Okay, I mean you're fair. All right. All right. Well, with that being said, Rob, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Confessor_X. And on Twitch at twitch.tv/ProfessorX someday in the future again. When I have internet.
Okay. Devin, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at DMP_Pookie and on Twitch at Mr. D3. And as always, you can find me on eBay at 100% unicorn feathers.
Okay. And you guys can always find me on Twitter at JaxForestWalker, all one word. On Twitch at DMWebby, which you will also be able to find us on twitch.tv/distractionsmedia on December 5th. So that's 2 weeks away-ish.
Yeah.
Where we will be doing our 24-hour live stream charity event, raising money for Extra Life. Starting December 5th, Saturday at noon Eastern Time. All of us are just going to be hanging out at Distractions Media. We're going to be streaming a bunch of various different types of games. Some of the games, who have, more people signed up, then the game could hold access are going to be streaming other games. So there's going to be things going on all sorts of different channels throughout that 24-hour period of time. We will also be doing a live SU. So you will be getting one for that week, but you'll also be getting a live SU for the following week, where we will once again be doing the Hot Sauce Challenge. This year is going to be a little bit different.
What week is that again?
The Hot Sauce Challenge?
Well, yeah, what week is the stream this week?
The 5th and 6th.
Yeah,
Okay.
the stream is going to be the 5th and the 6th.
Week after next, got it. Week after next.
Yeah. But we'll be doing the Hot Sauce Challenge. That'll be a little bit different this year than it has been in previous years. We actually have like a game to go off of. But we already have our hot sauces and ready to go. I have not tested mine. Mine are still in the box. It came in a pretty fancy box.
I did test mine.
Oh, I have not. I wanted to wait and just do them on the thing. So
I did test mine. Only reason why I did test mine is because I've been sick and I was trying to open up my nasal.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, hot sauce will do that.
It did. I can say for certain the first two, actually really fucking delicious. Number 3, not bad.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm curious about this blueberry ghost pepper.
Number 3 is not bad. I'll tell you this. Number 3 is not bad, which is not the blueberry. That's the one. It tastes like the number 3 tastes like a spicy tomato soup.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 4,
which is the
blueberry one, is the problem because I haven't taken enough of it to really get the pungent of the blueberry.
So all that's coming through is the ghost pepper? Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just not getting a lot of flavor. It's just like, as soon as I put it in my mouth, it's like gone.
I think what I'm going to do is for the stream on the 5th, I'm going to order, before the stream starts, I'm going to order some chicken tenders from the 99 probably, because they have phenomenal chicken tenders.
Yeah, sounds good.
And then I'm just going to bring them home, just normal ass chicken tenders, and then I'm going to bring them home and put little dabs as we need to on the chicken tenders.
Yep, that's probably what I'm going to do too. Something very similar to that. Also, too, are you doing a 5th hot sauce or no?
I wasn't planning on it because I feel like we only have I think we have the 4 categories.
Yep, that's fine. I was just curious, so I knew what I was doing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you can find us that and come hang out with us. We'll be there for 24 hours. At least I know us 3. Hopefully, we'll be there all 24 hours. Not necessarily all on the same call, because I know Rob has What Space Is This scheduled, and I'm going to be playing something different. I am not doing
I'll
that.
Be playing with Webby, whatever he's playing.
So
we will also be separating to play Players Unknown Battleground while they're playing Uno, because Uno was only 4 players.
Yes.
So we're going to separate from the rest of the stream, but we will still be streaming our own.
Yes. So with that being said, again, you guys can follow me at Jax Forest Walker, all one word, at Twitch at DM Webby, and on eBay at plucking Devin's unicorn feathers for money.
Oh.
Sorry, they're really expensive. We love you guys, and be safe, and fuck Booster Gold.
Fuck Booster Gold. So when you're gonna watch that ratings thing, let me know. So I'll watch it with you.
I can't hear you over the outro music, Rob, yet. But yes, I think something about watching something.
Yes.
I'll watch whatever you want me to watch.